To our third subtopic, which is staff notation. So after this lesson, you should be able to name pitches by letter name on the staff into clefs, which will be treble and bass, as well as identifying half steps and whole steps on the staff. So staff notation is the most common way to notate music notation in traditional Western music, and the staff consists of 5 lines and a clef, which is a symbol that tells where each of the 7 notes in the musical alphabet is placed on the staff. In this course, we're going to focus on 4 clefs, treble, bass, as well as 2 additional C clefs, alto and tenor. But for now, we will just focus on treble and bass. The treble clef is used for higher notes or notes being played by the pianist's right hand or higher instruments or voices. It is also called the G clef. The central curving line of the clef wraps around the second line of the staff, which is where the note G is placed. And you can use that as a reminder to help you find G and other notes when using this clef. And you can see that it doesn't matter which letter we begin with. However, if we start with G and we ascend by line and space, we follow the musical alphabet. You will want to actually memorize the line and space notes of the treble clef, as it will help you with identifying notes in different concepts later on in this course. You can see that there are a limited number of lines and spaces as well. To write notes below or above the staff, we use small little lines called ledger lines, and they continue or help expand the staff in order of the musical alphabet, and we will look more at these in class together. Half steps and whole steps on the staff. Here is key concept number 5. We can identify half steps and whole steps by using the staff in accidentals. When you write pitches on the staff, place the accidental before or to the left of, as you can see down here, the note head. When you say or write the letter name, the accidental is said after the letter name. For example, C sharp or C with the sharp symbol is pronounced C sharp. We can actually use the piano keyboard to help us identify half steps and whole steps on the staff. If we look at the first example, which is D to E, we can see that there are no accidentals. If we start on D, the white key, here on the white key, we see that there's a black key in between that and E. We move one half step to D sharp, and then another from D sharp to E. 2 half steps is equal to 1 whole step, okay, and there is a key in between each whole step on the keyboard. But looking at the second example, which starts on F sharp, we know that F is a white key, so F sharp would be the next ascending adjacent black key. On the staff, we see we're going from F sharp to G, and so on the keyboard, G is a white key, so we're moving from F sharp to the next adjacent key, which is G, and there's no key in between there, and so that is a half step on the staff. Generally speaking, accidentals will indicate the use of black keys, although not always. And notes that are one step, which is line to space or space to line, away from each other with no accidentals or share the same accidental will usually indicate a whole step, like here, as well as here. C sharp to D sharp, C sharp to D sharp is a whole step. And also, note pairs where only one has an accidental will generally indicate a half step, such as here or here, although not always. So you want to make sure that you can actually accurately count half steps and whole steps with and without the aid of the piano keyboard. Now try and name some treble clef notes on your own. At this point, the video is going to pause and you're going to be able to respond to these questions. If anything is confusing, you can pause the video, rewatch, write down a question that you may want to ask me in class. Let's go ahead and check those answers. We got number 1, it should be F sharp. Number 2 is D. Number 3 is E flat. Okay, we've got G here on the line. We step down to F to E. There's E flat. There's a flat there, so we want to use that in the name. And 4 is B. Okay, now try and identify some half steps and whole steps on the staff in the treble clef on your own. Okay, you're going to identify these as whole or half steps. And if anything is confusing to you at this point, you may pause and go back and rewatch or jot down a question to ask me in class. Let's go ahead and check those answers. Okay, number 2 is a half step. We've got an F sharp to G is a half step. Number 3 is also a half step, C sharp to D. There's no key in between. And you notice that this is accidental, no accidental, accidental, no accidental. Number 3 is a whole step. Okay, B flat to A flat. B to A is a whole step, so B flat to A flat is a whole step. Same accidental, generally indicating a whole step. Whereas number 4 is also a whole step, would be an exception. If we remember that B and C are half steps away from each other, then we know that if we lower this another half step, C down to B would be a half step, B to B flat would then make it a whole step. This is what I was talking about, how just because one accidental doesn't have, or one note doesn't have an accidental, doesn't mean that it's automatically a half step. The notes you want to watch out for that anytime you have E to F or C to B. Moving on to the bass clef. Lower notes are designated with the bass clef. This clef is also called the F clef, and 2 dots that are a part of the clef go above and below the line on the staff where F is placed. The bass clef has different lines and space notes than the treble clef, but as you can see, as we ascend up the staff, the notes follow the musical alphabet in order. So if you ever get confused, you can find F and go from there. Now try and name some bass clef notes on your own. If anything is confusing to you, you may go back and rewatch or jot down a question. Let's go ahead and check those answers. Okay, number 2 here is G. Okay, F is up here. You could count all the way down to G. 3 is D flat. 4 is B. And 5 is F sharp. Now try and identify some half steps and whole steps on the staff. You're going to identify these as half or whole. Remember to make sure you're using the correct letter names for the clef. We'll go ahead and check those answers. Number 2 is a half step. Now this is B to C, so that would be that exception of just because they don't have accidentals doesn't mean it's automatically a whole step. Here I've got F sharp to G, so that is a half step. B to A, no accidentals, so we've got a whole step. Number 5 is G sharp to A sharp. If it was just G to A, it would be a whole step, so G sharp to A sharp is also a whole step. Remembering our exceptions to that accidental or no accidental rule would typically be letter names E and F and C and B. So a little recap of what we learned here. Clefs help us to identify where letter names of notes are placed on the staff, on lines and spaces, how to identify note names on the treble and bass clef staff, and half steps and whole steps can be written on the staff using accidentals.